Congratulations on making it to the end of 2024. That's more than what I can say for some of the fashion moments and products that you probably won't be seeing in 2025. Let's get right to the point. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Drew Outta. It's nice to meet you. Today we're going to be talking about how fashion changes. Starting off, fashion cores are no more in 2024. Kinda. At the onset of the pandemic, there were a lot of cultural elements converging with one another, the biggest of which being the rise in popularity of TikTok. TikTok culture very quickly became youth culture, and as a result, new language was formed in the form of using cores as a way to identify varying style aesthetics that were seen online, that were seen on TikTok. These cores include things such as normcore, dadcore, Barbiecore, balletcore, and on and on and on. There's so many different examples. In 2023, one of the more popular women's wear fashion cores included mermaidcore. But in 2024, the rhetoric around mermaidcore was completely replaced by a non-core aesthetic, that being Brat Summer. Gorpcore, which is a fashion core that I talked about a ton in 2022 and in 2021, is a fashion core that defined outdoor aesthetics, and at this point, heading into 2025, the term Gorpcore is essentially useless. Useless in the sense that it no longer fully encompasses the fashion that is most prominent amongst this subsect of culture. I've found that as Gen Z continues to age and mature, using words like core to describe fashion has kind of fizzled away, and it's been replaced by aesthetics, or using kind of these like catchphrasey or title-esque terms to describe a particular style. Old money aesthetic as opposed to old money core would be an example. Next, hype clothing isn't so hype anymore. There was an era where Supreme drops, major collaborations, and exclusive sneakers were all the fanfare. But it seems like heading into 2025 that this just isn't the sneaker culture or the hype culture that I remember when I was a teenager growing up. Some people might argue with that statement, but where are things like the Nike Off-White 10 collab for the 2020s? Is it ALD and New Balance? Is it Travis Scott and Nike? These collabs are big, yes, but they just aren't as big as the moments that encapsulated 2014, 2015, 2016 when it comes to hype culture and sneaker culture. Some people might argue that that's for the better, but it's crazy. I just said 2014, 2015, 2016. That's a decade ago. That's 10 years ago. And so maybe I'm holding on to something personally with this, but I think a lot of people are. And they aren't recognizing that the sneaker world, the hype kind of like resale culture world, which we'll touch on later, it's changed. And it's not what it used to be, especially heading into 2025. And part of the reason this is going on, well, I think one of the reasons is that there's just so many collaborations, there's so many big moments happening week in and week out when it comes to the hype fashion or sneaker world. And two, I think collaborations are they're just a smaller drop in the bucket of culture than they've ever been before. There are just so many other things that people care about. I talked about how TikTok has become more popular. I think people care more about online culture. They care more about just other things other than what they cared about in 2014 and 2016. The world has changed in a lot of ways since those drops from 10 years ago. All right, this one's one that kind of hits home for me because I love these shoes, and I titled it Birkenstock Still in Stock. Birkenstocks, and more specifically the Birkenstock Boston, was one of the most sought after single products of the last, I want to say, 3 years, starting from 2020 to 2023. But heading into 2025, there just isn't the same energy for the Birkenstock Boston as there used to be. And I think the reasoning comes down to just a natural interest in product curve or a natural interest curve. Birkenstocks were really popular during the pandemic. People were at home. They wanted footwear that they could slip into that felt comfortable, but they could also like wear outside while they're social distancing from other people, that kind of thing. And that popularity, honestly, it sustained itself for a long time. But now that we're heading further and further away from the pandemic, new ideas are spreading, new concepts of footwear that are interesting are spreading. It's just a natural decrease in popularity for something like the Birkenstock Boston. But you know your boy, I'm still wearing my pretty much every day, and I guarantee people who have Birkenstocks are wearing it every day. They just aren't styling it as like what it was styled as in like 2020, when it was like Birkenstocks and capital socks with the smiley face on the heel of them, and like that isn't going on anymore in 2025, or at least it won't be going on heading into 2025. It's already kind of stopped. We know that. Also, I think dupe culture had a major effect on the Boston. Brands like Studio Nicholson, I have a pair of like Studio Nicholson clogs, and other clogs have imitated that Birkenstock Boston look, and even from lower levels of brands like just plain rip-offs of Birkenstock Bostons that are made in like third world country factories and things like that have been produced, and I think it taints the view of the Boston. All that and more have played into the Birkenstock Boston becoming less popular. Bleached eyebrows were raising a lot of eyebrows in 2023, but at the end of 2024, which is where we're at, I don't think that this is a look that many people are opting to go for. It seems as though this style was more used as shock factor for celebrities and influencers, and I mean, it's kind of obvious, like duh, like your 6th grade English teacher is not bleaching your eyebrows and calling it culture. It's really reserved for the people who push the boundary for what style can be and have that kind of more eccentric flair to how they decide to present themselves in a very public way, if they have a public audience or something like that. I talked about this in a earlier Trends That Died video, and it was big boots get the boot. Get it? Like big boots, they get booted, that kind of thing. No more big boots. Kinda. I mean, I'm making bold statements, and I want you guys to realize that if I make a bold statement and you're like, Drew, what the heck? There's many boots that are bold and big. So for the next trend, I think it's something that I talked about a little bit earlier this year when it comes to trends that died, and it's basically this idea that big boots get the boot heading into 2025. I'm talking more about like the big red boots, Balenciaga Trooper boots, the puddle boots, the croc boots. These boots made a ton of noise, and now as we head into the new year and we talk about winter styling for the new year, I just don't think that this style of footwear is as popular as what it used to be. Not even in 2024. I would say this is also like a 2023 thing that I wanted to wait and see whether or not it would play out in 2024 in terms of fall winter styling and heading into 2025, and I haven't seen it as much, and I think that is cause for me to say that it's dead in some respects. Maybe you could argue that like Timberland 6-inch boots are kind of another version of big boots that are playing out as a trend in fashion right now. But even Timberlands, I feel like their trend cycle or their moment was last year with the 50-year anniversary. I've talked about this a lot. And while people are still wearing Tims, and you know, Vanessa Carter just came out with a chrome pair of Tims, I don't know if as many people care as much, because like what I said previously, when it comes to hype culture and big sneaker drops and big fashion drops, there's just so much going on. They kind of ties together with all these things, right? We'll talk a little bit more about that too a little bit later. Also, Tims and like Balenciaga Trooper boots are at two totally different spectrums when it comes to price point. That also plays a factor as well in terms of people getting into like Balenciaga boots. And they had their whole scandal. There's a lot of things that happened, right? Next, underwear as outerwear is out of here. Get that out of here, man. I'm just kidding. That's a bit much. In my personal opinion, I'm one who thinks that underwear as outerwear is a bit bizarre, okay? Like, I think it's a bit weird to wear underwear as outerwear, but I think it can also look good. To me, it feels like the antithesis of timelessness. So how can something like quiet luxury and stealth wealth and the old money aesthetic exist in a marketplace where underwear as outerwear exists? I don't know how that's possible, but that's what has happened within the last, I would say, 18 months. And for the next 18 months, I just don't think underwear as outerwear is it's not going to be it. You know, it's not going to be the style that people are gravitating towards. And you could argue once again, just like bleaching the eyebrows, that like not many people are actually wearing underwear as outerwear. And I kind of would agree with you, but I also think that version of underwear of outerwear will kind of subside, and there might be another version of like kind of like girlhood or clean girl or these type of styles emerging for women's wear that might take over underwear as outerwear, or might take over that aesthetic underwear as outerwear. I'm sorry if I offended anyone who really likes underwear as outerwear. For me, it's not like it's a major thing. I just think that, you know, underwear as outerwear is this kind of like very stark body, like it puts body at the forefront of fashion as opposed to clothing, which there's no problem with that, but it kind of feeds into this like sexualization of fashion. And you know, fashion is it's not afraid to sexualize, or it's not afraid to kind of use bodies as a form of allure to purchase or to buy or to sell clothing. So there's that's just my own personal bias, but it's just something that, I don't know, if you have thoughts about it, like let me know down in the comments if you like underwear as outerwear, if it was even a real trend. I only really saw it on runways, honestly. I never saw it in person, really. Or like, you know, you saw it on red carpets too. But I guess those spaces are also culture, right? Next, we have the end of the quick flip in fashion. This goes hand in hand with hype culture subsiding, but the buy and resale model, like quick flip model, is crumbling a bit in 2024 and will do the same in 2025. Not crumbling like it's over, but crumbling in the sense that buying and botting fashion items just to resell them is no longer becoming as coveted as it used to be. That idea of someone who's gonna buy, bot, and resell and become a reseller, that's just not 2025 fashion meta. That's not the culture. What is the culture right now is being a vintage seller or a vintage reseller. That seems to be the hottest form of resale in fashion right now, and that's where the trends I feel like will continue to move in 2025, unless it's vintage, which is a different story. All right, next we have stealth wealth merges. What do I mean by that? Let me explain. When I was first writing and scripting for this video, I wrote down for this section, stealth wealth just becomes wealth. And I didn't feel like that was as powerful as I wanted it to be, but I think it's true. Stealth wealth in a lot of ways is just wealth. But what I think is more creative in terms of like understanding what I'm trying to say is that stealth wealth merges is this idea that stealth wealth is going to combine itself with a lot of different ideas, and it might not become, you know, just stealth wealth. So that means that the previous idea of what stealth wealth was will end up fading away, if that makes sense. So like, think of stealth wealth as a combination of old money aesthetic or quiet luxury, or the convergence and the merging of ideas like capsule wardrobing. These ideas are already being talked about by a lot of other creators, and they've been talked about for a long time. Minimalism and capsule wardrobing, these things have always been pretty popular. They ebb and flow with how people are feeling at different moments in time. So I think that the convergence or the merging of stealth wealth with a lot of different other terms will take place, and as a result, stealth wealth, quiet luxury, old money aesthetic, these things will kind of take a different meaning heading into 2025, slightly. And I think that's the perfect segue into an idea that's been kind of floating around more and more on social media over the last month or so, kind of the back half of 2024, which is that personal style is dying, and that capsule wardrobing, or kind of taking the thoughts out of styling yourself, is becoming more popular in 2025. Basically, personal styling takes a back seat to capsule wardrobing. Mina Lay and Emma Chamberlain have both made videos talking about how personal style is either exhausting or dead or changing in a lot of different ways. And I have a lot of opinions about both of their videos. I love both of them as creators, and so I have no shade to them at all, but I think that there's a lot of conversation to be had about this, so much so that I'm probably going to be making a video about it pretty soon. So if you're not subscribed, get subscribed for that. But these are two really big internet voices, and when they kind of talk about things, whether it's related to fashion or styling or culture, I think a lot of people listen, myself included, and I think I should take their opinion, their intuition, whatever that is that they feel inside, as something that we should all consider for 2025 fashion. What do you think? Is personal styling dying, or is something else happening altogether? Two more. I think that heading into 2025, the sneaker world is in a sneaker slump, honestly. People are tired of Sambas, they don't want Dunks, they aren't wearing as many Jordans, Nike's stock is down, and the collabs or drops that are doing well are making less noise than they ever have before. And there's a lot of reasons that we could attach to this happening. There's a a lot of reasons we can get into, but we don't need to do all that. We just want to talk about the fun stuff, which is that sneaker culture's in a slump, and we'll see if they get out of that slump in 2025 or if it goes deeper into a slump in 2025. Last but definitely not least, maybe the most important kind of idea that I want to talk to you guys about in this video, it is that 2025 will be the year that the single trend that dominates the year, it will be the end of that trend. Basically, that 2025 will be the end of trends. What do I mean by that? I mean that in a lot of cases, at least from what I understood when I was younger, when I was a teenager or like a young adult, I used to think about fashion as like there used to be a trend or a movement or a sneaker or a jacket that people wanted, and in a lot of cases that was true. There were singular items or singular things that people aspired to. In 2024, that changed pretty heavily. There wasn't a single item or a single brand or a single drop that people aspire to. There are a lot of brands that take up more space and take up more oxygen and draw more conversation to them than others, but in a lot of ways there are a lot of smaller, niche, under the radar or up and coming brands and people and creatives who are generating just as much noise, if not more noise, to the people who care about them than the big boys or the big players, the capital F big fashion brands that exist. The world is more complex and has more depth than ever before. And I actually got this idea from a Vogue business article that I was reading, and it was basically saying that 2024 didn't have a moment, it had several moments. From Brat to Wicked to Tyler the Creator to Tyla, the Met Gala, the sports world, all of these things are happening and, like I said, converging at the same time or within a matter of weeks of each other. And as a result, because there's so many events, it's hard to say that one brand or item or individual is or has dominated culture like what used to take place, I would say, in the past. I wouldn't say it really happened it hasn't really happened in any of the 2020s, but the idea that, that we'll return to a time where like a single person or a single moment has defined the year, I just don't think that that's going to happen because there's so much good and bad, like positive, negative. There's so much conversation and excitement and letdowns and everything. What exactly did I miss? Let me know down in the comments, and if you do so, do it kindly. I'm a person, okay? These are just opinions. They're not meant to attack anyone's identity or what they believe in, and if you feel attacked, I'm sorry, it's not my intention. I just want to have a conversation about fashion and culture, and maybe it's not even the most educated conversation, maybe it's me just rambling, but regardless, it's fun to have discussions about these things if you care, which I feel like you care if you're watching and you made it to this point in the video. As always, I'm spreading peace, love, and positivity in 2024. So that means I'm spreading peace, love, and positivity to you and more. Wherever you are in the world, have a wonderful rest of your day. Abianto. Peace. Yo, what is good post-vid? If you made it this far in the video, this is the post-vid. Give me a fist bump for making it this far in the video. Bop! Thank you so much for staying to the end. Give me another fist bump for making it this far. Bop! Thank you so much. PVV, just want to say Merry Christmas to you guys. If you celebrate Christmas, Happy Holidays. If you don't, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, all the things. Merry Holiday, Happy New Year, all that stuff. Have a wonderful rest of the end of the year. And if you're already in 2025, let me know down in the comments how it is. Are things better or worse? See you guys. Love you. Peace.